Welcome back to Mostly Growth, the #1 podcast in product monetization. Let's get serious here. Let's talk about Anthropic.
On today's Mostly Growth episode, we're going to talk about Anthropic's historic, better than ever Q1, and we're also going to catch you up on what's going on with OpenAI's ad model. Let's get to it.
All right, CJ, where did Anthropic end last year?
They ended at $9 billion.
That's a lot of money, but catch us up. It's been a quarter, 2026. Where are they now?
Well, by the way, they went from 1 to 9. So holy shit, that's a big deal. In 3 months, okay? So we were just talking about ending 2025. To end March, they ended at a $30 billion run rate, Kyle.
So they added 11 billion between February and March.
They added 21 billion in a quarter and 11 billion alone in 1 month.
Now, put these numbers in perspective. Is this just all of basically the net ads of every public software company out there?
It pretty much is. It's a scary amount where you kind of run out of companies to add into the mix to say how big is this. So for context, it's equivalent to 5 Palantirs, not Palantir net new ads. Palantir is the company and all their revenue in 1 quarter. So in 90 days, 2 work days in 1 quarter. No wonder why the guy didn't care about the title. And so I just want to run you through the revenue timeline. Okay. So they were founded in 2021. 2022, they did 10 million. Okay. Wow. If we could get a seed investment here. 2023, they do 100 million. One of the fastest companies ever to 100 million. But then they go from 100 to 1 billion in a year. Then they go from 1 to 9. They went from 9 to 13, then 13 to 19, and then 19 to 30. So it's the combined ARR of Palantir, Anduril, and Databricks just in 1 month. And then pretty much all the net new ads of 140 tech companies within 3 months.
We talked about revenue endurance previously on the podcast. This is pretty legit revenue endurance. They're basically 10xing every year, year after year after year. And they seem to be on track to do it again this year.
They seem to be on track to actually beat their 2027 plan within 10 months of 2026.
I think this also means they're past OpenAI. Although maybe don't tell that to Sarah.
Isn't it funny how time changes so much? Now it's a contrarian thing to say that you think OpenAI is winning. Who would have thunk it? OpenAI pulled up at 25 billion at the end of February. We don't know the March number. So they could have went nuts and also added a massive amount. But it seems like, barring something spectacular, they are at least a couple billion ahead.
All right. So Anthropic's really kind of accelerated. And I think, I don't know all the drivers to this. Anecdotally, Claude Code and Cowork seem to be driving a lot of this. Cowork in particular, believe it wasn't released until January 2026. And now it seems to be everywhere.
And it's over $2 billion in revenue by itself. So that's definitely a big driver of it.
It's insane how fast these new products have gotten adopted.
That alone is around the size of Cursor. Cursor's growing crazy fast too, so they could probably be approaching 3 billion at this point. Who knows? But it's nuts to think that they have a Cursor within Anthropic in and of itself.
2 billion is Claude Code. Where does the other revenue come from?
The majority of it comes from the subscriptions that we pay for, and then just the pure usage. So the token maxing of people at all these companies hooking up everything to it. So the constraint at this point is really just to have enough compute capacity. And what I'm noticing from talking to so many of these other AI companies, Kyle, a lot of them are almost reselling Anthropic in a lot of ways. So a rising tide lifts all ships with the investments that are going into all these other companies, like a Posthog, for example. In the background of all of this, you need some sort of large language model to run it all. And so they're benefiting a couple times over. So it's not just from usage of their own product as a standalone, but also piping in the tokens to basically power the rest of this whole ecosystem.
When we talked before, OpenAI really went after the consumer market and Anthropic went after more of the business market, the more serious mission critical use cases. And I think with an OpenAI, a lot of the revenue is still ChatGPT subscriptions. But those probably look a little bit more like a consumer-esque business. So there's probably some expansion as they sell multiple seat deals into enterprises. But in general, they're pretty capped of how much they can charge a customer. Anthropic, if they're mostly selling on an API basis, the starting spend for a customer is low, But as all of their customers take off and keep using Anthropic, and Anthropic just grows as they grow.
Hey, thanks for listening. We'll be right back after a word from our sponsors.
I've been writing my newsletter, Growth Unhinged, for exactly 5 years. When I went all in on it last year, I quickly decided it was time to make the switch to beehiiv. Honestly, I wish I'd done it even sooner. Switching to beehiiv was seamless, but the difference is real. Excellent deliverability, more customization with their AI website builder, built-in automations, and no 10% tax on my revenue. As a data nerd, I especially love beehiiv's dashboards and built-in surveys. My open rates jumped from 35% to nearly 50% after switching to beehiiv, and I'm not looking back. Beehiiv is built for people who actually take newsletters seriously. If you care about owning your audience, it's a no-brainer. Try beehiiv for free by going to beehiiv.com/Kyle. That's beehiiv.com/KYLE. Use code Kyle30 for 30% off your first 3 months.
Ali and the team at Tabs are building something that directly addresses one of the biggest headaches I see finance teams deal with today. Pulling data from your ERP, your CRM, your FP&A tools, and your usage systems and actually making it all work together. If you're running usage-based pricing or complex contracts, you already know how this usually plays out. Contracts live in one system, usage data lives somewhere else, billing happens in another tool. RevRec gets layered on top at month end, and finance ends up just reconciling everything by hand to close the books. This is exactly the problem Tabs was built to solve. Tabs is an AI-native revenue platform built for controllers and CFOs. It brings together data from your ERP, CRM, and real product usage into a single system of record. From there, it automates billing, collections, and revenue recognition without finance having to duct tape workflows together every month. If usage-based revenue is core to your business, this is the future of how billing and RevRec get done. Go check them out at tabs.com/run. That's tabs.com/run.
When I looked to set up my first CRM at Growth Unhinged, I knew I wanted something that was actually AI first. The world has evolved. Most CRMs are still stuck in the 90s. I found Lightfield, the CRM that remembers everything and does the work for you. It joins all my sales calls, reads my emails, and has the full context on every account. At this point, Lightfield knows my deals better than I do. I haven't had to set up a single CRM dashboard. Instead, I simply ask Lightfield questions like, which deals in my pipeline are most likely to close, or who do I need to follow up with today? It even automatically prepares me for meetings with a personalized daily briefing, and setup was quick and surprisingly painless. Lightfield is my sales coach, RevOps analyst, therapist, EA, all in one. See Lightfield for yourself with a 14-day free trial. Connecting data from your inbox takes just 5 minutes, and you can migrate in under an hour. Go to lightfield.app, that's lightfield.app, and use code MOSTLYGROWTH to get 3 months free.
Something that I went down a rabbit hole, Kyle, on the train back from New York this morning is free to paid conversion in consumer-based apps, right? So ChatGPT has 800 million weekly active users, over 1 billion monthly active users, 8 billion and change people on the planet. That's a lot of mind share, right? 5% of them pay on a monthly basis. So mid to single digits. That benchmarks reasonably well against other consumer apps that have a free and paid offering. So I remember I went down a deep dive on Grindr because I interviewed their CFO. They have one of the highest at 7 or 8%, and it fluctuates there. But the majority of consumer apps are somewhere in the 3 to 5% range. I don't know how you materially get that up over time without running into some sort of barrier. It would be crazy to think that they ever get it to 25% just based on the wallet share of what people can pay. Like, I don't think the majority of people in Africa are going to be able to pay $20. They would have to localize the pricing there. So at some point, it's like if there are 8 billion people on Earth, you already have 1 billion using it monthly. One of the variables would have to change significantly for this to keep going.
Well, yeah, that's where I think the Anthropic model is selling mostly the API or to serious users. You can grow as the overall AI economy grows. The big thing is you have to make sure that people keep your product in. So you need to always have the best product. And you really hope that people don't move to like open source models or their own homegrown models. You really need to lock those business users in. Like the worst thing would be you get your customer to be spending like hundreds of millions with you and then they graduate off of your product. And I think with OpenAI, their challenge is it's mostly a consumer subscription business model right now, but 95% of their consumers don't pay. and probably will like never pay or would just be very resistant to paying. So it's how do you monetize that 95% so that you can build a more profitable business model?
And I think it's the ads portion, which I want to do an update on real quick because we've talked about it in prior episodes. But before we do, I think it is important to consider the efficiency of both of these companies when it comes to how many people they have and the gross margin associated with it. So anecdotally, people are saying that Claude got to the 30 billion in a much more efficient usage of compute to run the latest and greatest like high grade models that most of these people are buying. So it seems like their gross margin is stronger than OpenAI if you were to do it on an apples to apples basis. However, they do have a bit of compute that they resell to customers like Microsoft and others that you could technically mark down, but it's not enough to move the needle. What really caught my eye is there's a tweet from Matt Slotnick, who I follow on X, and he had brought up the revenue per head. And so we always talk about how much cash these companies are burning. But if you were to do the simple math on how many employees Anthropic has versus how much revenue they're bringing in, 30 billion over 3,000, it's approximately, check my math here, Kyle, that's $10 million in revenue per head.
That is so impressive. I mean, they're still burning cash. I'm hard pressed to think of too many companies that are higher than this, like maybe OnlyFans.
That's the only one I could think of, or like Craigslist back in the day, I think was like $11 million per employee. But this is the highest I've seen.
A lot of people token maxing. All right. Well, Sarah is really not going to join your podcast after this discussion. Anthropic is betting on business users. They're building a really efficient business model on both the compute side and the employee side. OpenAI is going in a very different direction towards consumers. Give us an update on their ad business model.
In the same week that Anthropic releases these revenue numbers, OpenAI decides to do this update on their ad business, which they recently launched. And so they did get to $100 million within the first quarter, so good for them. But like also we're trying to like beat Google and their $200 billion worth of ad revenue. But they updated, Kyle, their revenue forecast for this year to $2 billion. And then they extrapolated that out to 2030, $102 billion in ad revenue.
102 feels oddly precise.
We're going to go from 100 to 102. Like that is a level of precision that like I can't wrap my mind around because you don't know what you don't know at this point. And these have to be, I'm hoping, a bottoms up analysis based on ARPU, which I want to get to in a second. It wouldn't have been Sarah, who's awesome, right? It wouldn't have been Sarah Fryer greenlighting this forecast, I'm sure. Who internally is like, that's the number we're going to put out to the street, essentially, even though we're a private company, to say we're confident 102 billion. And then like, second of all, where these forecasts are coming from and how confident they are versus if it's just a marketing ploy.
Well, it's a good question. I mean, obviously, it's hard to forecast 5 years out, but the ad business model, like there's some known elements, right? Like it's a lot of it is based on how well you monetize a given level of attention that you have from an audience. And if Google's at 200 billion, if OpenAI is on track to generate as many or more eyeballs by then, it feels very plausible that they can get to half of Google's ad revenue. Now, a lot has to go right to get there. But I think like the math equation to calculate that is pretty simple. It's just the execution, I think, is the bigger question.
Well, the simple math, to your point, if you work backwards, that means they're assuming they go from $2 per user per year to $60 per user or your eyeballs per year in ad revenue.
So if they're charging $20 a month for a consumer subscription or $240 a year, so they're basically they'd be monetizing at a quarter of the rate of a subscription user.
Actually, I didn't think about it that way. The ratio between the two, yeah.
It feels plausible to me. Now it's high. They have to be delivering great ROI to their advertisers. I think they probably have to make a lot more data available around like what people are searching for, who's clicking on links from their advertisers, and really tying the ChatGPT ad to revenue. But all of that stuff can get figured out over time.
It can get figured out, but what changed in between the last time there was a forecast and today? Because last time they said it was $15 per user, now it's $60. And so for context, Meta leads in terms of ARPU per user on an advertisement basis. It's $57, which is way beyond Pinterest and Snapchat. So they're saying we are actually going to be better than Meta, who is the current leader in per user monetization there.
It's very ambitious. People spend a lot of time in meta platforms. But my guess is like if you look at probably how much time is spent in ChatGPT and how that's been trending, there's probably a plausible case to get to the meta level within the next 4 or 5 years. I've personally noticed like as you move towards an ad model, your incentives as a business change. Instead of getting the right answer really quickly or like a really detailed answer, your goal is actually more prompts, like more time spent in platform. So you see a lot of like ad-based business models doing things like blocking links or like basically like LinkedIn discourages you from sharing an external link in your post because they don't want you sending people from LinkedIn to another platform. They want to make money on advertising. I'm already starting to feel like ChatGPT is doing a little bit of this. Like the answers I'm getting all like, very much encourage me to take a next step. It's like they give me kind of a shitty initial answer and they're like, would you like me to do A next? And it's like, okay, I guess so. I wish you just did that the first time, but they can get an ad slot for each time. And so they're already seemingly taking steps to get people to increase that engagement level.
I don't have like hard evidence of this or anything, but like I felt it too. And I was talking to somebody at this conference I was at who said that he's now purely using Claude because he feels like he has the paid subscription, but the logic has been changed to kind of string you along when you ask a question. And he's like, before it would just like cut right to the point. Now I feel like I have to ask 3 times before I figure out what I actually want to figure out. So I wonder if they're also trying to game that a bit too with token maxing and trying to get people to drive more queries.
I think the two businesses were very similar for a while and now they're moving in different directions. Like the revenue is coming from different places, the business models are different, and then the incentives for what the companies do is different. Anthropic is leaning much harder into like getting the context, setting up skills, setting up third-party integrations, like charging business users and charging not just the $20 subscription, but pushing people to a max plan, getting them to spend 200 plus per user. I wouldn't necessarily say it's like a better strategy. I mean, it is better right now from a revenue standpoint, but it's just a very different business model.
It is. And I think they're trying to maximize revenue per user, even if it takes a little while longer. Whereas I get the inkling that OpenAI or ChatGPT wants to get as much per user today and then plug that into the forecast.
So let's get back into Anthropic and some of the things that they're doing and how they pulled off this massive quarter. They do seem to be launching new stuff constantly and going deeper and deeper into this business user to kind of increase their advantage against OpenAI. So I spent a lot of time with go-to-market teams. Go-to-market teams would use Claude over the last year, over the last 2 years, but now they're actually adopting things like Claude Code and Claude Cowork. And to me, what's fascinating about that is like Claude Code is a developer oriented tool that like the interface is not designed with that average everyday user who doesn't know how to code in mind, but people are finding it so much more powerful than the regular chat version of Claude. Marketers are teaching themselves how to use Claude Code on the weekends just because they're seeing the light of how much they can get done.
And for the listeners who may be a couple steps behind, the way that I understand it is there are 3 basically different surface areas that you can use Claude and the same tokens within. So it's the chat, which in many ways is similar to ChatGPT, but then you can also set up projects, which is similar to setting up a GPT. Then you have Claude Cowork, which is like Claude Code, but in a UI and UX, it doesn't actually require you to be in a terminal. And then you have Claude Code, which I think can do a bit more because it's more flexible because you're actually in a coding interface. Is that the way you understand it, Kyle?
Claude Chat, it's great for like thinking, writing, analysis. It's like your strategic thought partner for quick things. I think of Claude Code as, it's an autonomous coding agent. So it reads your systems, it writes codes that can organize your files locally. It has machine access on your device. So if you're in go-to-market and you want to build any sort of like go-to-market infrastructure, like you want to build automated plays for your team, Claude Code is, better for that. And then Cowork is like somewhere in between. With Cowork, it doesn't have as much of the, agentic capabilities as Code does, but it has actually a lot of the same power that people kind of know and love in Code, but with a more accessible user interface.
I have a complaint/confession, Kyle.
What is that?
I was trying to use Claude Cowork and it really sucks at using web browsers. I wanted it to go and log in and grab data from one place and bring it back and like drop it into Excel. And I just couldn't get it to work. Like it just couldn't, and you could even see it kind of futzing around trying to find buttons. And I'm like, just click the button, and it couldn't get to it. And so I gave up, and I'm only using projects. So I'd probably sound like a total noob.
It is fascinating, like how many limitations there could be for each of these. So I've been running a Claude pulse survey, specifically focused on go-to-market folks. What was interesting is they're split about a third, a third, a third between who's primarily using Claude Code versus Cowork versus Chat. The Cowork point, I think, was especially surprising for me because it was just launched in January. And so the adoptions really exploded. But I asked people, what are the biggest limitations that they experience? And I can give you some of the quotes around it. They have Cowork use ChatGPT for certain things around using the browser or, running internet queries. I think there's other challenges around context windows and memory credits and where things are pulling from. But I think we're still very early on in terms of the quality of these tools. And I think there's a lot you can get done now. I think there's also a ton of frustrations that people are having to deal with as they're using these products.
Can you give any specific tasks that people are successfully accomplishing? Because I may try to steal a couple because I came up short.
We ask people about what types of tasks you adopt and then what's your number one use case with it. So I'll get into the categories and I'll get into some more specifics. But the categories that are most adopted, general productivity was number one. So 80% use it for that.
Put that away. No, put that back in the bottle. It summarized my email and told me that it was going to be 47 degrees outside.
Content was actually a very highly adopted use case. So 2/3 are using for some sort of content creation. And about almost a third said that's their number one use case. The third is about go-to-market engines and prospecting. That was used by about half of the people I surveyed. And then about a quarter said it was their top use case. So on the content side, that would be building landing pages through Claude or creating social media posts, creating entire websites even. And then from more of an SEO perspective, you're on beehiiv. You can audit your performance in beehiiv and have it suggest SEO improvements that you can make to increase your content performance. So things more of where it can go from analytics to action connecting to your tools. And then ideally also learn from your best performing content to help you create new content. So the content use case is very popular.
Okay, this is the one that I'm curious about because I wanted to come up with a list of doing this report on finance use cases with AI for companies in the real world. So companies that have inventory, right? So I made a list of CFOs and I asked it to come up with their LinkedIn profiles. And I think 70% of the links are just wrong.
It's powerful from an orchestration perspective, but that doesn't mean it does every one of the actions the right way. And so sometimes I think the best way to use Claude would be to also say, hey, we're going to connect Claude to Clay and we're going to have it look up the LinkedIn profiles via Clay or something.
Took them paid twice. Nice. Okay.
Yeah. It doesn't eliminate the need for other tools. It's just, it allows you to run some of these workflows in a way that maybe would have been done manually before.
Any other specific go-to-market tasks that are research related? Because I really won't want these to work for me.
So, I mean, a lot of people will build workflows that'll kind of automatically do a lot of research to help you prepare for a sales call, for example, or an outreach email. So you could, for example, give it instructions for, hey, here are these 100 CFOs I want to reach out to. For each of them, research X, Y, Z, and give me a summary on the most interesting why now pain points that should be the reason why I reach out. And so it can do more of this work that an SDR or maybe an assistant would be doing, that's just going to allow you to write a better message. And then if you find that works well, you can have it write the message on your behalf.
Do people go so far as to let it send messages? Can you do that if you were that confident?
I mean, I think you can do it. Whether you want to do it is a different question. I feel with a lot of these tools, there is a ton of power here, but with great power comes great responsibility. You just want to check each step in the sequence as opposed to like if you have it take a 5-step workflow and run from beginning to end, you could have a problem in any one of those steps and it would be really hard to audit. And so I'd probably rather start by checking step by step. And then if all of those check out, then you kind of have the confidence to have it run on autopilot.
Kyle, is Claude replacing any tools yet? Because I feel like I'm just increasingly adding tools to use with Claude.
In the survey, about half of the people said, no, it's not replacing tools. A quarter said that it has replaced like some sort of tool or vendor. And then the rest said like, it's not yet, but it, will soon. But the most common things that they mentioned were an SEO agency, an ad agency, a contractor, a spreadsheet, maybe ChatGPT. They just like don't need it because they're using Claude now. Maybe a data enrichment provider and maybe a third-party automation tool like a Zapier. It's mostly just replacing some of the work you would be doing manually or hiring someone else to do as opposed to replacing a tool just yet.
Yeah, I think it replaces a lot of freelance work and stuff that you would do manually. But I got to be honest, there are a lot of things he can probably just solve in a spreadsheet still.
It did actually have a pretty great quote about that. Basically, someone in the survey said they spent all of this time and money on something that they ended up actually stopping their workflow and just using a spreadsheet for it.
Yeah, it's like that meme where it has like the not smart person on the left and then like the genius person up top and then the really smart person on the right. And they're both using spreadsheets for the same task.
Mostly Growth is a Mostly Media production. Executive produced by Ben Hillman. That's me. Additional production by Steve Sarasoli. Nothing said on this podcast is intended to be business or investment advice. It's the sole opinion of CJ, Kyle, and Ben. Just some guys who love talking growth. Mostly. If you like this podcast, hit subscribe and give us 5 stars. It'll only take like 2 seconds and our algorithm overlords love it. Drink water, call your mom, and have a great day.